Hosting our fifth in a series of 6 webinars about our energy future. And we're going to introduce our main speaker here, Tom Content, very shortly. But before that, for those who aren't familiar with the work, we are striving toward, Jen, if you want to put up that slide about clean energy districts. In the past, or several of these webinars, we've been able to, one of our board members at Driftless Area Land Conservancy, well, I'm going to back up a second in case there are those online who don't know who I am. I'm Chuck Tennyson with the Driftless Area Land Conservancy as a community organizer, and Jen Filipiak, if you see her there, she's our executive director and being very helpful as our tech assistant today. We're very grateful for her assistance that way. But the picture you see on the screen is one of our board members, Dick Cates, and he is a strong advocate and been very supportive of our work in working toward building a clean energy district. He wasn't able to join us today for this very brief introduction to the concept, but I will fill in for him. So here locally, we've been striving to build a model that emulates the clean energy districts that are happening in Northeast Iowa. 6 or 7 counties there have established these entities, and that's what we're striving for. And what exactly is a clean energy district, you may ask, and the answer's up on the screen there. They're nonprofits. They are modeled on the Soil and Water Conservation District model that was begun during the Great Depression, when there was a need for both economic security and environmental sustainability. Both were being challenged mightily at that time. And so virtually every county in the country, is my understanding now, has a Soil and Water Conservation District. And the clean energy districts in Northeast Iowa are following that model because we have the same purpose as they did. And that is, if you're looking at the second question there, they're to retain the prosperity in our local economies and provide environmental stewardship. That's what the ultimate goals are, both environmental and economic. They're equally important to an energy district. And we do that, energy districts do that by fostering sustainability so that they can retain local wealth through advancing energy efficiency and building locally owned renewable energy capacity. So DALC has been working toward establishing this, and we have some very dedicated and interested local activists who are joining us. We're not at an energy district level yet, but we call ourselves an alliance. I'll just refer back to it a little bit toward the end of the webinar today. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce our main speaker. And he is Tom Content. And Tom is the executive director of the Citizens Utility Board of Wisconsin. Many of you know that as CUB. It's the Citizens Utility Board of Wisconsin is the nation's first CUB. It was formed in 1979 as a nonprofit, nonpartisan consumer advocate for residential and small business utility customers of Wisconsin. Tom joined the CUB board in 2017, After working for 30 years as a journalist in Milwaukee, Green Bay, Philadelphia, and Boston, he led coverage of energy, utilities, sustainability business in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, and prior to that worked at newspapers in Green Bay, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts. Tom became interested in energy and what it cost households while he was in the back seat of his parents' car, waiting for what seemed like forever during the gas lines of the 1970s.
That's right.
And has been advocating and speaking on these issues and writing on them ever since. We're so grateful to have you here with us, Tom. And with that, we will let you take it away, and Jen will help you if you need to share your screen so we can see your slides.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad we can make this work. Hope I can make the technology work. But I appreciate the opportunity here. So I'm going to click the share screen button and see what happens.
There you go.
Worked. Hey, that's a start.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Yeah, so thanks for that introduction. I look forward to, I might have actually a couple of questions myself about energy districts down and how they're working down the road because of some conversations that I'm having with some other groups. So, but what I wanted to do today was what CUB does is primarily two things. One is advocacy at the PSC, and the second thing is consumer education. And so we've in the last couple of years started these so utility bill clinics, and usually it's kind of an in-person session and then people can bring their bills. But so if you have your Alliant Energy or whatever it is bill handy, you can certainly bring your questions. But we're certainly available afterward for questions too. So and see if I can advance the slides. There we go. And so here in Milwaukee area, we did several of these in-person utility bill clinics last year at the Natural Foods Co-op at all 4 locations there. So we'll talk a little bit about CUB and then a little bit about energy bills in your budget and some issues we've been working on at CUB as far as fixed charges and reducing cost overall. And then if there are any questions, then we can talk about some policy stuff too, if there's time. So CUB was founded, was actually the vision of Ralph Nader to create CUBs in all 50 states back in the 70s. And Wisconsin was the first state to take him up on that idea. And so Wisconsin is the very first CUB in the country. There are now 7 or 8 around the country. And it's been a good model for Wisconsin. We think a lot of states actually use so what we do is we advocate for the residential and the small business customers of the state at the Public Service Commission, and then we also sometimes get involved at the legislature and in the courts. But our main focus is at the PSC. And it's all about leveling the playing field. So the utilities, especially the investor-owned utilities that are publicly traded, have a lot of you can see this from Jim Wehner, who introduced the bill and led the passage of the bill in the 70s, outflanked by attorneys, economists, and other experts at these PSC quasi-judicial proceedings. Now CUB, we're able to hire experts and attorneys to basically represent the little guy in this proceedings, the little guy and gal, and small business too. We've added small business membership. CUBS has about just under 2,000 members across the state. We've added small business members in recent years as well. If you look here, you can see how we're unique. With Oregon, we're the only 2 states in the country that rely solely on a nonprofit to do this work. Most states have an attorney general's office, and they have some highfalutin names in other states like Office of People's Counsel and other things. And you can see that in the states that surround us, they have not only state government agencies that 1 to 2 state government agencies that represent the residential customers. They also have a CUB. So we are challenged in some ways in terms of advocacy, but that's where we look to partnerships with other groups as well. So as far as on the economic side, we can talk about 2019. We had some rate settlements with different folks, different utilities. Mainly, it was last year's focus was on We Energies and Wisconsin Public Service, and we had some good victories there, including one on the shuttered Pleasant Prairie coal plant. And that was a good outcome for us. We had one negative outcome. There was a pollution control project that we thought had significant overruns, and it was the first of its kind in the country that was tried. And CUB had forecast years ago that there would be overruns on this, and we were proved right. But the PSC ended up siding with the customer, the utility on that one. Also last year go ahead.
May I interrupt just for a minute here? So this is Chuck again, and I apologize, but I forgot to tell folks that if you have questions as Tom goes ahead here, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the chat box, and I'll be keeping an eye on that. And if you have a question, put that in there. If it's apropos to right where the discussion is at the moment, I'll probably interrupt Tom again and see if we can answer those right as we go. Otherwise, we'll have them for the end. So look for that chat box and write in your questions. Thanks. Go ahead, Tom.
Great. Oh, sure. And I wish I could stop my slides from doing their automatic advancing. I thought I'd stop that some monkey on my back, but we'll handle it. Then the other thing last year, which I didn't include, was we were advocated in the big solar cases as well as the Cardinal Hickory Creek Power Line case. Today's presentation is more focused on the rate side of life. So, and then in 2018 we had rate cases with Alliant and MG&E, both Madison Gas and Electric and Alliant. Their fixed charges remained unchanged, and for MG&E, it doesn't say it correctly here, but for MG&E, the bills actually went down, which just doesn't happen very often. We had the settlements have been aided in part by corporate tax reform that happened a couple of years ago, that the utilities had money that they needed to get back to customers, and that's resulted in at least keeping cost pressures from going up. Having said that, we have had some rate inflation over time. So you can see it's kind of stable. It's been stable in recent years. We put We Energies up on this chart because that's the one I had more readily available and had used in some presentations last year. But you can see the rate inflation over time for We Energies customers, a residential bill, is 80% since 2001. And over here is where, if you see if it just had matched the cost of living, that's where it would have been about a 44% increase since 2001. And then over here, you can see that among utilities across the Midwest, we actually have a comparison across 50 utilities in 11 states. So this just shows the top 25. But Madison Gas and Electric is 6th in the Midwest, We Energies is 7th, and Alliant Wisconsin Power and Light is 15th. So in that top tier, and just looking at where we are as a statewide average for residential customers, we're 13th highest in the country as far as the straight electric rates. Our bills, because our bills sometimes are viewed as a little bit more affordable, and that's just because we're efficient, and we watch what we spend, and we care about energy efficiency by and large in this state. So, but high rate pressure is something that has certainly hit Wisconsin over the last 20 years as we've done a heavy investment in the supply side of our infrastructure, utility infrastructure. And so now moving into go ahead.
I'm gonna interrupt again if you can go back on that slide. So you answered my one question, was going to be, and maybe you could expand on that a little bit, why we are leading in an area we don't want to lead with the energy expenses, and maybe it's the build out of infrastructure. If you want to expand on that, and then also while I'm interrupting your chart on the right, does CUB have a sense of where you think that line is going to go? Is it going to continue to plateau there, or do you have any prediction about where we'll be in the next 5-10 years that way?
Those are good questions, and just to talk about the trends first. So right before the 2000s, the utilities in the late 90s, the utilities were talking about deregulation, and there was a lot of a lack of investment in the infrastructure, and that heavy investment infrastructure, we ended up running into some reliability challenges in the summers of 97 and 98 that led to some changes in policies that put the utilities more in the driver's seat in terms of planning out the system. We used to have more of a centralized planning process in this state, and now we have no centralized resource planning and no state approval for resource planning. And we think that's really been a challenge for Wisconsin, and been a driver for what had been overinvestment in fossil fuel, natural gas and coal generation, and as well as the transmission lines. And the challenge going forward is now the utilities have all turned on a dime or done a hard left, and are now looking to invest very heavily in solar. But a lot of the coal investments that basically helped increase these costs in this period, we're still paying for that. So it's the advantages of of clean energy are on the economic side are really impressive. When you look at, the solar is the cheapest thing you can build if you're a utility these days. And so as they invest in solar, they're hoping to the utilities are trying to keep things stable. Whether that's we think dealing with the old coal plants that are being shut down and trying to trim the cost on what's remaining to hit our bills on those old plants will be a way to keep rates affordable in the years ahead. And that's so what on the clean energy transition, we talk about it in the everybody has a little tagline, right? So we like clean done right. So it's clean done right. It's done kind of systematically and with fairness for customers. But clean done right for us means making sure you're not paying twice for the clean energy transition. And I have some slides on that I can get to later as well.
Well, that's helpful. I mean, it gives me a follow-up question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So with that deregulation, Wisconsin, as you said, Wisconsin does not have a plan for where we're going. We don't have any, am I correct in saying any any state organization that is, as a whole, is mapping out a future for Wisconsin's energy future? Is that, and if I'm saying that correctly, do you have thoughts about how would that be useful? Seems like it would be to me, and how that might come about. Is there any movement of trying to get that going?
Well, there is actually. So we don't have a plan right now. We do what the PSC does every year, a strategic energy assessment, which is more a snapshot of where we are and where we are. And that the draft of that new strategic energy assessment was just published a week or so ago, but we don't have a statewide plan right now. And the challenge, and I guess two things on that. One is, CUB has advocated for more statewide planning in the past, and even we think that some form of increased planning would be helpful, even if it's not a statewide plan. Even if it's because each utility is in a different spot as to where, how much Madison's economy is stronger than some of the rural areas, and so MG&E's frame of reference might be a little different than some of the other utilities. So I like what the Minnesota Commission does, PS Public Utility Commission over there does, is they do resource planning on a utility by utility basis. Whether we can encourage that in Wisconsin or some form of that in the current environment is unclear, but we think it would be a help. having said all that, there is one area where there is a statewide plan being formed because Governor Evers issued an executive order asking for his Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy, if I've got the name right, to come up with just that. So it's Maria Redmond is the director there, and so she's got a big job ahead of her. She's working on that this year. It's in parallel and in concert with the climate change task force that Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes is leading. So that's, yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, very, very helpful. Appreciate that, Tom. Thank you.
Oh, sure thing. Okay, so now we'll go a little bit into energy bills. And things are impacted a little bit by COVID and the pandemic. And so I will touch on that as we go along here. But typically you see that if you take electricity and heating together combined, it could be $2,000 a year or more for a residential utility customer. But the challenge is a regressive cost structure. Some states actually have discounted rates based on your percentage of it, based on your income, and we do not. So it is a regressive cost structure here in Wisconsin. And so what we try to do is encourage full participation and focus on energy. And so a lot of my presentation is a giant ad for Focus on Energy and making sure people are aware of all the good things they do. And if you look at the breakdown of where your expenses come from, you can see that here. Lighting 10%. I think that might be on the way down as we transition toward LEDs, but we'll see. I know I'd done a story at the Journal Sentinel years ago talking about if every household in Wisconsin invested in at that time CFLs with their five most frequently used bulbs, we'd save a whole bunch of emissions and a lot of money at the same time as a state. If everybody in the state were to actually do that, it would help offset the additional emissions that Wisconsin got from building some of those new coal plants that the state utilities did build in the last 15 years. And so one of the challenges with the bills in Wisconsin is the increases in the fixed charges that we've seen. So if you go to a Quick Trip, you don't get charged a special fee just for driving into the parking lot to fill up your gas or to buy bananas. You actually have to buy the gas and the bananas in order to pay. So this is the challenge in Wisconsin, and we've gone in the wrong direction on higher fixed charges, which discourage energy efficiency. So I have a few slides just talking about that in a little more detail. So here is a typical Alliant Energy bill, and the customer charges here. On the sample bill, which is on their website, they only used a 28-day month. So it actually comes in at under $14 $14 for this Jane Doe customer, but it's typically Alliant is in that $15 to $16 a month range, which Wisconsin's fixed charges now range from 15 to 21, and about 7 years ago they were in the range of $6 to $9 a month. So it's a lot, and there are fixed charges on your gas bill too. And this is where, as when I go out and do these presentations, this is where customers really complain and notice these things is in the summer months when there's no heat on, and maybe just maybe just the hot water for showers. People really do notice the fixed fee that shows up every month on your gas bill. This is actually just the electric. Is that the electric? Oh yeah, this is electric and gas. I was showing the electric here. These are the explanations for the electric. And then on this slide, there are explanations for the gas. So the customer charges down here, number 7. And then same thing for We Energies customers. I like the We Energies format of the bill because they actually compare your usage versus the same month the prior year. But I know Alliant has a lot of those kind of information through their online account and through their I think they have an app on their smartphone now too. So these fixed charges versus energy charges are something that are really important. And if you can bear with me 1 second, I'm just going to play this. It's good video from a group that we work with, and My slides are going crazy on me. Hold on one sec. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna play it. Just 2 minutes. Oh, hold on one sec. That'll teach me to use my earbuds. Hopefully I'll be able to hear it better in a second here if I can disconnect.
What's the fair way to charge people for electricity? It seems easy enough. You pay for how much electricity you use, right? Like donuts, you pay by the dozen. But in addition to charging by use, electric company bills also have something called a customer charge, or basic or service charge. This is a fixed fee that must be paid every month, regardless of usage. Lately, power companies have been pushing to increase these fixed fees more and more. Utilities try to justify this by saying many of their expenses are fixed. Their poles, wires, vehicles, staff. Of course, every business has these same kinds of expenses. For the donut shop, it's the cash register, fryer, chairs. But if the donut shop added a monthly fixed fee like the power company, the competitive donut market would put a stop to that fast. Why should a customer who only wants one donut a month have to pay the same monthly entrance fee as one who wants dozens a month? With electricity, it's similar. Some homes only use a little electricity, while others use a lot. Homes that use less power from the utility are typically households with lower incomes, energy-efficient appliances, or a home solar system. So, a move to higher mandatory fixed fees is really unfair for residents in these homes that need less energy from the power company. Ensuring fairness for customers is critical. With an electric company, there are just a couple small items that are okay to charge through a small fixed fee. Only the home's individual connection to the grid, the meter to measure use, and the billing. That's it. The fixed charge is a simple calculation, not a negotiation, like it can sometimes seem. The right answer is usually very low, no more than $5 to $10 a month. It's time for regulators and power companies to get it right on utility fixed fees. Consumers are counting on it.
So that's a good overview. Can you hear me okay? Okay, so that's a good overview that that we like to use. As I said, our rates are higher than the average. Our regulators define and utilities have defined it in a more aggressive way, and we're trying to convince them that. But it really does, you've got your energy cost portion of the bill here, and then the fixed cost, and how you define that varies from state to state. In Wisconsin, in part because of concern about distributed solar, and that impact on the utility sector was one of the reasons that led to a big fight in 2014. CUB was joined by AARP, Environmental Law and Policy Center, other groups that really tried to hold back some of these increases, and the increases actually didn't get imposed to the degree that some of the utilities wanted, but we don't like them because they discourage conservation and they really penalize low energy users and often low income users. So what's happened since then, it has been, in some ways, it's just a risk reduction model for the utilities, especially in an environment where utility sales haven't been growing. A greater portion of their sales is assured, or income is assured every year. And puts more risk on the customer, we think. So here's what's happened since then. We've been able to hold the line through the rate case settlements that we've negotiated. So you see those big increases that hit right around that it started in January 2015, and then some, I guess it was Alliant actually went up in 2016-17 timeframe to that $15 a month that it is today. And that's now the lowest among the big five utilities. And we have been able to hold the line, even with Xcel Energy. We were able to, they negotiated a 4-year freeze on the fixed charge in the last settlement with them, with that utility. And obviously this is something we'd like to see, and some of the folks who support renewable energy would like to see more progress on and have them actually come down. We haven't had that a receptive commission on that issue, but that could be an issue that we could start making some progress on in perhaps this year or soon. So that's
Tom, I'm going to interrupt again. So thank you for this good slide. Do you think that their argument, I mean, as part of the utilities argument, is we have to have this or we're not going to be able to survive, or is that kind of a red herring and they just want to make as much money as possible? Do you have any?
I think it's a red herring. I mean, I think they obviously want to make as much money as they can, and they have been able to be profitable companies. Wisconsin's had a commission, no matter who's governor, it doesn't matter, that Wisconsin had a commission that has been supportive of utility finances and shareholders. And we think there needs to be a little more balance on the customer side of things. And one way to do that would be to shift back toward lower fixed charges and boost energy efficiency at the same time. We're overdue for increased funding for focus on energy, but that's not going to be happening overnight. But that's something that I think is being talked about in the whole scheme of the recommendations that the lieutenant governor might be coming up with this year on climate change, because focus on energy and energy efficiency is the cheapest way to cut carbon emissions.
Right. Thank you.
Sure. And so for customers, what are your options? Well, one thing you can do, and there's I'll give you the big asterisk right now, is that we're in the middle of a pandemic, but time of use rates are often, pre-pandemic, are a big way to save for a lot of people. So it's basically, Alliant actually uses the slogan nights and weekends, kind of like the old phone plans of the 80s or 90s, where your energy rate is cheaper late at night and in the early morning and all weekend long. And so if you can shift it's hard to shift dishwashing to just the weekends, but if you can shift your clothes washing to the nights and your dishes, or clothes washing to the weekends and your dishwashing to nights, you can save. We think we like time of use rates. We think that unfortunately not enough people take advantage of them. So I think we encourage customers to contact their utility to try to see if it makes sense for you. So the big asterisk is that during a pandemic, everybody's at home. We're cooking all our meals at home. And so a lot of nights and weekends rates are good when people are, actually commuting away from the house during the day. So, so there is a temporary pause on this, but we still put it out there as a recommendation because we think there'll be a vaccine at some point. And so this should come in handy. And then simple steps that people can take for energy efficiency. It starts with light bulbs, but it also starts with what's free. And so what we've found is that not enough people know about this free service from Focus on Energy. Of course, you're paying for Focus through your utility bills, but this is available to any residential customer every 3 years. You can get a free pack of energy bills showing up at energy saving gadgets. There's a variety of choices on the Focus on Energy website that include not just LED bulbs, but also some of the specialty bulbs. Like if you might have already changed out your lamps, but if you haven't done your bathroom, those special lights in your bathroom or other places, they also include faucet aerators and wraps for your water heater or different things. So even a smart what's it called? smart power strips. So we really encourage people to take full advantage of something that's free. And then the other thing that's free, which is useful in the pandemic, and I'll just highlight it right here, is this Focus on Energy Marketplace. Because of the pandemic, Focus isn't sending folks out to people's houses anymore at the moment, but there's an online marketplace on the Focus on Energy website where people can find energy saving devices, including smart thermostats. So the other big thing, so you got your time of use rate, you maxed out on your LED bulbs. If you've done those two, then the next thing you should think about is the smart thermostat. There's some different, and right now, Focus had a $75 discount, but I think the prices came down a little bit overall from the manufacturers. So right now it's a $50 discount for any Focus on Energy or any customer of a Focus on Energy utility, which is the big 5 utilities, as well as many of the municipal utilities in Wisconsin. And you could save up to $150 a year. And I was able to find some information from Energy Star with the EPA program that if you use an Energy Star thermostat, it's kind of the same thing we were talking about earlier. If everybody did this, right? But this is at a national level, not at Wisconsin level, but if everybody did this, you'd save $750 million on our energy bills and a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So it's something that is really an interesting development. Technology is changing quickly, and we think as the grid gets smarter and customers will be able to have more control over their energy bills going forward, if we have the right policies in place. And then the other things, some of the simple things that we talk about, it's turn off the lights when you leave the room, just like Mom used to say. And then unplug your electronics, even those chargers, that because of phantom load, there are different estimates on how much phantom load is really costing us, but it can be a lot if you have a lot of things just sitting there not doing anything without a smart power strip or a power strip. And then be efficient, whether it's beyond not leaving lights on, it's, full loads for your dishwashers, washing clothes in cold water, air drying clothes as much as possible versus, blasting the dryer, the heat through the dryer. And something that is overdue in my house, vacuuming refrigerator coils. That's actually an energy saver and a smart thing to do to keep your fridge running well. And then HVAC is our heating furnaces and AC systems are big energy users. So adjust your thermostats, wrap your water heaters, keep your filters changed. Basically, doing that regular maintenance is actually good for your energy bill. And then for folks who want to go beyond that, and again, there's another COVID asterisk here, but one way to do that is to actually kind of test out your home's MPG, if you will. You can get a home energy assessment through Focus on Energy. Right now, they're not going into people's homes yet, but I just heard this week on a call that Detroit DTE Energy has just resumed doing home energy assessments there for energy efficiency purposes. So, but getting an assessment can really find out where the problems are. And often people think it's my windows. It's often not your windows. It's the wind. It's the cracks near your windows and doors where the door frames and window frames where you're leaking energy. And I've gotten to go on a couple of these visits where they do blower door tests and infrared cameras, and it's really fascinating to watch. And you learn a lot. And if you do the assessment, then you get discounts, which are highlighted over here for the various insulation and other things. It's not as sexy as a solar panel. I'll give you that to do good insulation, but in terms of having a comfortable home and a home that reduces your carbon footprint and your energy bill, insulation is the way to go. As we say here, your home is leaking energy and you don't even know it. So That's why a lot of folks in the vernacular are now saying, you know, instead of just talking about cutting energy, it's cutting energy waste. And because we're all thinking a little more sustainably these days, and if you think of who wants to waste anything, so we're hoping, with the economy, or with the state in the process of reopening, at some point Focus will probably be back in the field, but this is something to at least research. You can find contractors in your area. Focus calls them trade allies, but those home assessment consultants are available on the Focus website. So those are kind of the overviews on ways to save. And if questions about fixed charges or about energy bills, I'm happy to take more on that. And then if not, I can move on to some of the policy stuff that we're excited to work on for the customers.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tom, so this is Chuck again, and actually I have a comment and then a question. The comment is, so we didn't, as I said at the very beginning, before we introduced you, we're working on forming this energy alliance, and part of what we're doing is considering what types of projects we might do as we just get started here. And so this presentation is very helpful. It's reinforcing assumptions that, at least that I've had, I think many of us, about LED bulbs as being a simple place to start, and spreading the word about Focus on Energy. So it's very good to get our assumptions confirmed. So thank you for that.
Sure.
And then you alluded a little bit to where Focus on Energy funding for that possible expansion could be. Do you have any more comments or speculation about where that's going in the next few years?
It's really hard to say. It's expanding Focus was a priority under the Doyle administration, and reversing that expansion was a priority under the Walker administration. And because we have divided government and we're quite the purple state, I think it's probably not on the near-term horizon. But I think as we look toward at some point, as we look toward the fact that every utility wants to cut their emissions by either 80% or 100% by 2050. And so we have ways to do that. There are lots of ways to do that. And they're talking a lot about adding big solar farms on cornfields right now. And that's kind of the main focus currently. But the most cost-effective energy transition is one that maximizes energy efficiency along the way. So so I don't see it happening in the near term, but never say never as utilities and stakeholders align on carbon policy. If we do, but that's the job of that governor's task force, the lieutenant governor's task force. The utilities are well represented on that, and some other stakeholder groups are on that. CUB is not on that group, but we work in other arenas to kind of advocate what we'd like to see. And one quick thing, just following up on LED bulbs, is there's been a lot of concern about the white light that they generate, or the kind of a bluish light that they generate. But there are different temperature settings and if you go on, there's a light bulb finder app. But if you look for a warm temperature, you can get kind of the equivalent of the old soft white, kind of that you can get both the energy savings and the kind of light that everybody in your family can live with. So sometimes that's a challenge, but the quality of the bulbs has really come a long way.
Thanks, and we do have a question from one of our listeners here.
Great.
Jeff asks, he's got like three of them, but they kind of all have to do with one another. Where is the charge on an Alliant bill that funds Focus on Energy? That's one. How about the second nature charge, or the statewide low income assistance fee?
So you
Oh,
can,
yeah, there's three things.
so they actually do itemize the statewide low income assistance fee, which is $3.15. It's based on a percentage. And I think the focus on energy charge is, I believe, is equivalent to that. Oh, this is the We Energies one. I apologize. This is the We Energies bill. So I'm looking at my own bill over here by Milwaukee. So that's where it's itemized on our bill, and this is our version of Nature, the Green Power Pricing Program. So let me go back up to Alliant here and see if they actually. So here is the statewide low income assistance fee is here, $1.74 for on the electric bill. So your focus bill is generally, the focus bill is not called out on the bill as a separate item, but it is about equivalent to that. And then the other one was, I don't know, this sample bill does not include that. So for a customer that would have that, that should be on there. And one thing that, because of the price of solar coming down, the gap between regular pricing and this premium for all renewables has come down. It used to be, and for some utilities, I don't remember Alliant off the top of my head, I apologize. But for some utilities, it was a 2-cent premium per kilowatt hour that you would end up paying for if you wanted 100% renewable through that green power pricing program. And a lot of the utilities have brought those down where it's about a penny extra in the last couple of years. As the utilities move more and more toward their own renewables on their for their infrastructure, a greater reliance on renewables. It'll be interesting to see how much people are still interested in subscribing to these. And yeah, and did you have other questions? I don't.
Yeah, well, I'll just see if you touch on them. So Jeff had these 3 questions. So where's the focus on energy charge? I think you indicated that was, am I correct? You're going to point to it for us.
It's going to be embedded in the energy charge, so you can't actually see it. It's just in there. You just can't see it. It's not called out as a separate fee. And on this bill, and then this Alliant bill, they did not have the green power pricing. Is that called Nature? Second Nature? They did not have that. They didn't show that on this sample bill that I found. So I think that would be called out on an Alliant bill for a customer who had it.
Okay. And then the other one was the low income, and that you showed us that. That's
number 3 here. Yeah. Number 3. So this one was about $2 a month for that customer.
Yep. I think Jeff has a follow-up. I was wondering if the FOE was included in Second Nature or statewide low income fee.
Oh yeah, it's actually, I think, more in that energy charge. I can see his question here. Yeah, it's more embedded in the energy charge, and the utilities got sometimes it's up to the PSC and the utilities. It's a negotiation about which things get itemized. When I was at the Journal Sentinel, there was actually a fee put on utility bills for a while that actually funded district attorneys' salaries around the state, and it was actually on your utility bill instead of your tax bill. And it was one of the stories that generated the most interest of any of the stories I wrote, because there was so much outrage when people found out that there was, even if it was a small amount, why is my energy bill going to pay for that, right? So it's because they were rating and that was at a time when they were rating the Focus on Energy program to help balance the state budgets. So back and that was a long time ago. But in 2006, the state passed a law that stopped stopped rating the Focus on Energy program, and so it's been fully funded ever since. And at the same time, they stopped doing the district attorney fee that generated so much interest.
I have another question for you. You were talking about the Focus program, and how does Wisconsin's Focus program compare, how well does Wisconsin support that in comparison to other states across the country to their comparable programs?
So a couple things. It's a cost-effective program. It's rated by Lawrence Berkeley National Lab as one of the most effective as far as helping reduce cost in the country. But the challenge is that it's, as we've kind of just been stable, Focus's budget is set at a straight 1.2% of electricity sales, and our sales have been flat. So and with the Great Recession, they came down. So it's been pretty steady Eddie as far as the amount of funding. And so we've fallen behind just by staying in place. So in other words, what I mean there is a lot of other states have moved toward more aggressively on energy efficiency, including Minnesota and Michigan, where they actually set energy savings targets. So they actually target, they say, we want to cut energy sales by 2%, and this is how much energy efficiency spending it would take to actually cut that amount. And so it ends up being more spending. So on the other hand, while we've been kind of steady Eddie, other states like Ohio and Iowa have rolled back energy efficiency initiatives, energy efficiency programs, and funding for those. So, but one of the things that there's a national ranking of states by ACEEE, American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, and Wisconsin had ranked in the top 10 in the country as far as the array of different programs, not just Focus, but also on building codes and other things relating to energy efficiency. And we're now in the middle of the pack. It's that staying in place where other states have just passed us by. And so now we're about 25th or 26th in the country in their annual ranking. And I'm happy, I can share the most recent ranking with you if you'd like to see that. It's always good information.
Okay, well, that's very helpful. Thank you. And I don't see any more questions in the chat. So if you want to move forward with some policy,
sure.
or what's your next, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. And so this is kind of what I was referencing earlier on clean done right, and how do we get to a clean, cost-effective clean energy transition. And I'm going to stop and have a sip of water. So we built the coal plants in Oak Creek and Wausau over the last 15 years. And in fact, in the most recent decade is when the Oak Creek plant came online. And then we also spent, that was about 3 billion right there. And then we spent another few billion, lots of billions, another 3, I think, on just keeping older coal plants going. So that's, we had a lot of plants that didn't have modern pollution controls. And so through settlements with the Environmental Protection Agency and Sierra Club, our utilities kept coal plants going by installing these pollution controls. CUB, representing the consumer, was concerned that we were investing to keep less efficient coal plants going in some of these around the state. And now that's coming home to roost a lot more quickly than even CUB had feared, because not only some of the expenses just started to hit bills in the last couple of years. There's a coal plant, an Alliant coal plant in Sheboygan, Edgewater, where they did a pollution control upgrade that was just complete. They did a series of upgrades, and the last one was completed in 2017. And that's the plant that they announced just in the last month that they're planning to shut down. So the challenge is that how long does the money that you don't pay for our utility stuff over all at once. It's all financed over the life of the project. So it's over 40 to 60 years, depending on the project. So as I put it here, if I move from one house to another, I stop paying my mortgage, but we're going to be stuck with 2 mortgages. And that's where CUB is hoping for some progress, because solar, there's no fuel cost, which is great. It's cheap, and the price of solar has come down 80% in the last 5 years, which is great, but it's still not cheap. just Alliance proposal that they just announced is less than $1 billion, but it's if you add that to what the other utilities got approved in terms of solar last year, we're already well over 1 billion and on our way to 2 in terms of solar investment. So it's not that we're critical of the solar, it's just that when you try to plan for a long periods of time and you're still paying for both, that's where we're concerned about Wisconsin's competitive ranking relative to other states. And so another way we describe it is money for nothing, because if you look at this plant, this is a plant that We Energies had built in the 80s, and it was on track to retire in 2040 and 2045 because it was built in phases. And it shut down in 2018, and it was no longer needed to keep the lights on. They built enough other plants so that it wasn't needed. And so should we be paying? How much should we still be paying for something that's not needed? Is the question, and that's a question that's going to be coming up next year with Alliant with regard to that Edgewater plant. So how did we resolve that? So basically, in last year's rate case with We Energies, they wanted to keep being funded for that. And there was about $400 million left to be paid on that plant, $400 million. And we're here, and so a certain amount of that is just profit. So the utility was going to continue to get their 10% profit on that plant for another 15 to 20 years. So that is the challenge. And we negotiated a settlement with them, with We Energies. And so we basically ended up with a refinancing plan. We're waiting for them to file that. I thought they were going to file a new case to actually do the refinancing in May. And so I'm hoping it's coming this month. But luckily Wisconsin was fortunate. There were some lawmakers back in 15 years ago, led by Senator Rob Coles, Republican from the Green Bay area, who didn't want the utilities to profit from adding all these pollution controls, because in essence, why should they get their return on something where they had to resolve lawsuits from the EPA and others? And so that actually never got used, that financing tool, but now We Energies is committing to using that finance tool for what's remaining on their books for that Pleasant Prairie plant. So that's $100 million out of that $400 million. And so with refinancing that, there would end up being, instead of being straight financed the traditional way, it would be a ratepayer backed bond, but the interest rate would be much lower, down to 3%. And so, so down from their 10% profit, and what I show here is 8%, which is kind of a blended profit that they get. So we're hoping that moves forward. We think that that could potentially save customers over time for We Energies. And what you're seeing is this securitization is being talked about around the country. There are other folks in other states that are talking about this, and there are discussions in Wisconsin right now about whether you could actually take that environmental trust financing and apply it to the whole plant. So Colorado has been a leader on this. I don't know if they have energy districts in Colorado, but I know that there have been folks out there that have talked about municipalization of some of their utilities out there. But one of the things that they're doing, that they passed a law that it basically would allow if it were in place in Wisconsin, it would allow all $400 million that was remaining on the books to be financed at that 3% rate. So we're excited about the progress we made with We Energies, and with Alliance announcement this month, or in the last month, about Edgewater. That's going to be an issue, is how much, given the fact that they've added a lot of spending to that plant before, and then suddenly decided to shut it down. They say it's no longer economic, and we're going to look at their analysis. We think that that's going to be a big issue that we're going to be looking at, not this year, but probably in the rate case that involving Alliant Energy sometime next year, that would set rates for 2022. So that's a quick overview on kind of the one of our big issues in the coal to clean transition that we think is important. And then we've talked a little bit about focus, and so this slide talks about some of these things, and on the importance of energy efficiency and demand response. Because so often our utility sector is focused on the next big shiny object and the expensive stuff, which is the power plants and power lines, the big power plants, the big solar farms. And so with a smarter grid, you can take advantage of newer technologies. As electric vehicles come on, you can make sure you're charging at night when the costs are low. Building codes is a challenge for Wisconsin. We don't have up-to-date building codes, and that's actually, here's that ranking, the drop in the ranking that I was talking about. Our failure to keep our building codes up to date has been a challenge for us as well. And then we'd like to see more action on the low income issues, whether it's making the housing stock more efficient, but also because of the pandemic and the Governor Evers issued executive orders that stopped utilities from being able to disconnect people during the pandemic because the incomes were suddenly shut off as people stopped working. And if you're going to shelter in place, shelter and reliable service becomes that much more important. But that we could be left with a big bill of folks who haven't paid their bills once that comes due in a couple of years. So we're looking for some kind of relief that would potentially be a win-win for everybody. If you can maybe discount rates for low-income customers to get them back into so that they're paying a little bit toward their big balances that might be due, that would help, because the alternative is that all of the costs that they can't pay will just be spread across all the rest of the customers. And so we're working with consumer advocates in other states, and to try to see if we can advance some efforts in that area this year. And this is kind of controversial at the bottom. This is where you would actually, one of the challenges for utilities is that they focus on energy reduces their sales. And so utilities there's an incentive structure in place, and they invest in the things that are going to give them a return. So if you're able to give them a return of some sort on saving energy, would that be something that would help us toward that clean energy transition and or affordability for everybody? So it's something that might have been anathema a few years ago, but it's something that we're at least opening to having that discussion, maybe in the context for better, in the context of a world where we have better system planning.
Quick question for you, Tom, on that very point.
I'm just gonna
Look, are you hearing me?
Can you hear me still? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Can you hear me, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay. So back on that point about paying for energy efficiency and savings, am I correct that some states have implemented policies with their utilities in regards to that concept?
Yes. Illinois does that a lot. Wisconsin used to do that actually with Alliant. They had their shared savings program where they went and worked with their industrial customers and others to do that very thing. So that's something that we'll look at models in other states. But you see, Alliant Slipstream, based in Madison, is a contractor to Commonwealth Edison to do energy efficiency programs, and it's part because they see a bang for the buck in doing efficiency. So, and I haven't looked too far beyond to see what other states are doing in that regard. But utilities, there is more talk about something there's always more jargon every year, but one of the acronyms this year is PBM, PBR, performance-based rate making. So if you set a reward structure in place for the utilities, such as carbon reduction or such as energy savings targets, such as hitting your reliability targets, would they get a small adder to their profit without even having to come back to the PSC? And that's something that Chair Vaughn, Rebecca Cameron Vaughn, has talked about conceptually as something that she favors exploring, but it hasn't really gone anywhere yet. But we're interested to see what kind of, creative solutions there are that can address our challenges on the resource planning side and on the demand side, because just letting the utilities, switch out coal for solar is good for their bottom line, and it's good for clean energy overall, but it may not be the best thing from a statewide perspective or for the customers.
Mhm.
And then I'll just go through some case updates. I think this is the slide this shows MG&E, our 2018 settlements where rates actually fell, and that was the first time that their base rates had dropped since 2007. So the corporate tax reform did help with both of these. It's rare for a utility to put a new power plant, turn a new power plant on. In this case, West Riverside Energy Center in Beloit, but from Alliant. They just turned that on actually last month in May. And our bills didn't go up as a result. And that's because of some offsets that we were able to negotiate into the case from the tax savings. And then you can see our work to hold the line on those fixed fees, those customer charges. Last year we had a case with Xcel, and they had come in every year for small increase, not big increases, but every year was another increase. So we were able to negotiate a settlement there. These settlements came because the legislature, the utilities actually wanted to set up a system for more settlements, so that the traditional way that we work at the PSC, it's a quasi-judicial agency. So legal briefs, anybody who's familiar with the Cardinal Hickory Creek project knows as well, but it's the same thing for rate cases where you have expert testimony, the utilities have their hired guns, and then we have to hire our own. But rather than litigate to the end, they've set up the legislature responding to the utilities, set up a system where the legislature is now encouraging settlements, and there are procedures in place for that. And so that actually, it gives CUB a stronger voice in a way, but it also changes the voice that we have, because now we're negotiating in these rate cases, we're often negotiating across the table from the utilities rather than just hiring these national experts. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more on that in a minute, but this is the Xcel case. And then we talked about the We Energies as far as the Pleasant Prairie issue, but then we also got commitment to collaboration about, they're going to do a household energy burden analysis, which we think will be important on that low income issue that I was talking about. And then the increase overall was much lower than what the utility had proposed. And then same thing with WPS in Green Bay, Wisconsin Public Service. They had actually come in for a 10% increase, and it was whittled down to a 0.5%. It's partially because of lowering fuel costs. But same thing where we're going to have that collaboration on household energy burden analysis and maybe some innovation there. And then this year, what we're focused on, there's a lot. There's the COVID, things related to COVID, and that includes the 2 rate cases for Alliant and MG&E. Alliant has just proposed to keep rates the same for 2021, in part because of COVID and the impact on the economy with businesses shutting down. It was hard to forecast where sales were going to be for next year. So they came in, both of these are expected to be 1-year cases. We traditionally do a 2-year case with each utility. And then Xcel has an electric vehicle pilot that we're working on. I mentioned that strategic energy assessment that was just published about a week ago. And then Alliant with their big solar projects, multiple locations around the state, plus the retirement of Edgewater, which will actually be fought out. That'll be decided in next year's Alliant rate case. And then that refinancing docket on We Energies. So We're all working from home, but we're not bored. So any quick questions on the case activity?
This is Chuck again. I didn't see any in the chat, but just a comment and question. You're not bored. I mean, I don't personally follow what you do very closely, but I get the updates. You've done a boatload of things and continue to do so, which is phenomenal. We're very grateful. You have a pretty small office and staff. Is that correct? You want to just tell us a little bit about that?
That's a perfect segue for where we're going. We have a staff of 3 right now, 3 plus a part-time attorney. We lost our attorney who got a job at DNR. And so we have myself as executive director. I hired a utility analyst who's an expert away from the PSC a couple years ago. So we're glad to have him on board, Corey Singletary. And then Richard Stork has been there with Cub for 26 years now. And he handles a lot of our communications, our outreach, but also our membership. So we have mailings to members that we send out as we're financed in part by members and in part through the PSC. And so what we've also been working on to help Cub become more sustainable going forward, that settlements law I mentioned created a challenge. When we negotiate those settlements, it has to come earlier in the process than Cub's traditional role, which was to hire those national outside experts for cases. And now we have to actually negotiate upfront more often with these utilities. So what does that mean? So the unintended consequence of this legislation, which frankly we did warn about when it was going through 2 years ago, is a new bill that is moving, we hope will continue to move forward in Madison, despite the politics of the moment. So it's a new bill that will actually enable Cub to get more resources, and we'll be able to expand our staff. So I mentioned this before. You can see how Minnesota has a Department of Commerce and an Attorney General's office and a Cub, and Illinois has a very big Cub and an Attorney General's office. So the utilities did not want Josh Call to become a ratepayer advocate, and so we negotiated directly with the utilities to have boosted funding for Cub so that we could have these in-house expertise for Cub to negotiate with the utilities. And here's an example of how other states are paying, or how much customers in other states in the Midwest are paying. So we generally get about $500,000 a year through the PSC, through both for our operations and then to hire those outside experts. But you can see in other states, I mean, Ohio and Indiana actually have huge agencies that do ratepayer focused work. So $5 million, $6 million. But if you compare with surrounding states, 3 million, 1.5 million in Michigan. So we have a funding proposal in this legislation that would boost our funding up to $900,000 a year. And so if you think about it, what we've done is you see a whole penny here, but we're actually funded from less than a penny a month for the typical ratepayer across the state. And that $3.5 billion we've saved since 2006 translates to, for every dollar we've gotten, we've saved ratepayers $170 that the utilities wanted to add to our bills over and above that. And so, so with this new funding model, and I skipped one slide, so I'll just have to talk about it. But it's we would be funded primarily just from the residential and the small business customers at a level of 2 cents a month. So 2 cents a month on a typical, or actually it's about 1.5 cents a month on a typical electric bill for the customers of the 5 big utilities. And this would enable us to hire, we'd be able to compete more with the salaries at the PSC to hire an attorney and to hire more analysts. So we would hope to have 3 analysts total, plus an attorney for a full-time staff of 6. And we think that because these settlements, we've been able to negotiate these settlements in recent years, but the fact that there was this tax savings ready to return to customers in a way kind of made that
not easy, but easier than they will than all the settlement discussions going forward, we think. And so we think that if we can have those folks who can be talking with the utilities, basically they'll get to know them better. And sometimes the national consultants we use don't know the utilities as well as we do. But if I can, I'm still a generalist. I was a journalist, as you know, so I can't testify on the stand in these PSC cases the way these experts do. But I hired one who can, and it's worked out well for us. And so we're hoping to hire two more like to supplement that. And so the good news is that it made it. We're part of a utility bill that the utilities wanted certain things too. Some regulatory changes and nothing toxic, we don't think, from a customer point of view. But it passed unanimously in the Assembly and was pending in the state Senate right when the Safer at Home came down. So if the Senate ever meets in person again, we think this bill will move forward and we'll be able to do a lot more for customers going forward. And so we had our anniversary celebration in November with in Madison, and we had Representative Kuglich was there from the legislature and Chair Vaughn, and they both talked about the need to have a more sustainable funding source for CUB. So this is the slide I was looking for. And so you can see it, 19 cents a year for a typical residential and small business customer. And we had support from a big group of folks that normally doesn't support CUB. So we're excited about that. We've been working in a collaborative way. So the utilities know we'll still call them like we see them, like we did in the Cardinal Hickory Creek case or in their rate cases, but that they think it's more effective to have a stronger CUB that exists, that they have working relationships with, than to have no CUB and have an attorney general doing this work. So here you can see how it would work overall. We'd have a 4-person regulatory team. It would still leave just 2 folks unless we were able to get more contributions from donors or grant funding to expand our outreach for our education. But we think that we can, for the additional investment, Wisconsin will save, customers will actually save $12 million because of our ability to negotiate better, at a minimum, because of our ability to negotiate better settlements for customers in the years ahead. And then, so we do have membership at $40 a year for a residential member. And we think there'll still be a role for that going forward, because I mentioned that would only be for certain cases, certain utilities that would be funding us. So we could use member dollars to support our work on, we actually do, because I have an analyst who is good at this stuff. He's actually represented ratepayers in Menasha, Kakano, Shawano, and elsewhere where there are municipal utilities instead of investor-owned utilities. So we think that, and we hope that this gets all the way to the finish line, and but membership support is going to be important for the future, so we can build up reserves in case the legislature giveth, and at some point the legislature could taketh away, I suppose, too. So that's a little bit of update on what we've been working on to try to boost advocacy for small businesses and residential customers in the years ahead. And then this is some of the resources we have. We've been a little behind on social media and the blogs this year, given our focus on the legislation and our casework with basically 3 full-time staff. So, but we do have an email newsletter that goes out about every month that tries to keep people up to date. And then certainly, if you folks have questions, I'm available, whether it's about energy savings or about energy policy or about your utility. And that's the last slide. I made it. So if there are other questions, I'm happy to take them. You're on mute. I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. How's that?
Okay,
Can you
that's
hear me now?
yep.
Yeah. Well, I hit my mute button, but I didn't hit it the right way. I was just started to say, great timing. We're down to about 5 minutes left, actually. And I tell you what, I think your last few slides there are showing how effective you've been with minimal resources and how much more you can do with just pennies, literally pennies from each of us.
Yeah.
It's quite impressive and optimistic. We're hoping that new bill will go through, and it'll only be for good. So congratulations on all the good work.
Yeah, thank you. We're hoping that the Senate might decide to come in for whatever reason soon. There was talk of them coming in this summer. There's also talk that they may wait till after the November election to finish off their bills that are still pending. There's a whole slew of bills that the Assembly left on their Republican-controlled Assembly left on their doorstep in February. But no, we're looking forward to being able to do a lot more, and we think a collaborative approach is effective in the current environment, but we think with more resources that we can actually be even more effective for the customers, and it'll free me up to do more things like this, because with that 4-person regulatory team, I can just spend a lot of time around the state or around Zoom on the state.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And I'm just going to make a couple comments back on just as closure here about our energy district and where we're going forward here, just for those of interest here, these last couple minutes. I will remind people that 2 weeks from today will be our last webinar, and this is Katie Demetz from the Wisconsin Academy of Science, Arts, and Letters will do our webinar. We'll present a webinar on natural climate solutions. I think maybe a more common way of thinking about that were solutions about how we're going to sequester, how we're able to sequester the carbon that's in the atmosphere and the oceans in a natural fashion. So I'm very much looking forward to that. You can find that listed on our website under the Energy District tab under what we do. And you need to register if you want to participate in that. So that'll be 2 weeks from today. And other than that, just for in a minute or two here, our alliance, we're calling ourselves CLEAN, the Iowa County CLEAN. And CLEAN stands for Clean Local Energy Alliance -now. That spells out CLEAN. We have a terrific group of a small but terrific group of volunteers who are putting together ideas for moving forward, both in framing how this alliance will operate and decide on initiatives to undertake and so on. So you can contact me again. Our director and tech assistant had to leave, so I'm not savvy enough to put up my email address on here. But if you Google DALC, Driftless Area Land Conservancy, it's easy to find my address. It's just charles@driftlessconservancy.org. We'd love to have you participate or sit in on a meeting, or if you have an idea for how that's something you'd like to learn more about or help with, love to hear from you. So other than that, I think we're ready to call it a day and get out on some of this about perfect summer, almost summer day.
That's right.
And yeah, and Tom, we thank you so much for this. It's very enlightening, and the work at CUB is inspiring. So keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.
Right. So long, everybody.